with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruff. And Rich, I mean, what a week. What a week. And the headlines keep coming. Has the UK and the EU actually made a Brexit deal? I mean, that's hit the wires.
That's right.
I mean, what does that look like? Will it get past Parliament? I mean, I can't imagine that this is going to be an easy thing to get over the finish line. China and the U.S. make an interim deal. Well, we're calling it phase one. Phase one.
Right, very interesting. You know, maybe a short-term deal leading to a larger or midterm deal. This also shows a little bit of softening on the Trump side.
And maybe also the China side.
Mm-hmm,
But
exactly.
It's not yet papered. It's not yet papered. And I guess you got to read the fine print. And then we're hearing from Nancy Pelosi in the House that the USMCA might be getting a vote. That's the U.S., Mexico, Canada free trade agreement to replace NAFTA may actually get a vote in the House. Very good progress, hopefully. Maybe there could still be just a little teeny bit of bipartisanship out there to do something for the American people as we're witnessing this impeachment circus. Then you have the NBA absolutely stepping in it in China. I mean, in LeBron James, or should we call him now Chairman James? Where wasn't this the guy that, you must always seek justice?
Yes. He was very concerned with Colin Kaepernick, and you should have justice and due process, and this isn't right.
And human rights,
so he
and
defends
freedom.
He defends a country that Mao killed 70 million people to consolidate his power, and he says, "Well, maybe I didn't do enough research on this. Maybe I'm not quite sure. I'm not aware of some of this stuff." Wow, really? Why do you suppose I call it Red China?
Oh my goodness.
Okay, go ahead.
And then GM in the UAW, it looks like they're going to make a deal, but still, the workers may not be back for a while. I guess they make a deal, and it's still very complicated.
Well, it's no different than buying a car. You cut the deal with the guy, and then you go in to the finance guy who really cuts the deal, and then basically tries to rape you with every other option that they want to add to it, including, listen, for another $20 a month, you get a moose. Those are only in the Northern Territories, by the way. Just saying.
What a racket.
Yeah.
Hey, Rich, we got a lot to talk
Good
about
show.
today. We're going to have an incredible show.
Yeah.
We got wonderful guests. And our first guest is Elaine Parker, who is the president of Job Creators Network Foundation, a great organization. We've had their folks on many times, and we're glad that Elaine is with us today. Elaine, welcome to Made in America.
Thanks, Neil. Great to be here.
So there's a lot of headlines coming out this week. I mean, do you want to take a crack at any of those to try to let us know what's going on?
I would love to. My favorite topic today, though, is health care.
Well, that's the Democrat debate. I mean, we got to get the Democrat debate.
No, I'm glad she said that because it was a very, very important topic, number one topic for most Americans.
Because Obamacare right now is getting trashed, but getting trashed by the Democrats. Isn't that funny? But tell us, what is a conservative alternative to what's going on the Democrat side?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, Neil, because today the Job Creators Network unveiled a new healthcare framework for healthcare reform. And basically what it stems from is we're unveiling healthcare for you. And the website is healthcareforyou.com. It's personalized healthcare, your health, your doctor, your wallet, and your choice, which is everything that healthcare should be for the American people. And Job Creators Network Foundation has conducted the largest market research healthcare study involving more than 25,000 American voters. And we've developed a framework for healthcare reform from those inputs that will do three things: repair, restore, and improve our patient-doctor relationships remove the D.C. bureaucrats and politicians from healthcare decisions, and increase choice, which will bring down the cost of healthcare.
Which is a terrific idea. Now, let me ask you a question. I'm really delighted that we're talking about it. The president is in Texas today, where he's opening up a factory in the Dallas area, and then he's giving a big rally tonight. And so, if you see what the citizens of Texas are concerned with, and of course the Democrats try and turn that into a blue state. That's a big push there. Dallas is very blue. Houston's very blue. Austin is obviously very blue with a campus there, and it's what it is. But 22% of the population in Texas, number one topic of concern, and I'm sure Elaine knows this, is health care. So why is it? This is great that we're having this conversation, Elaine. Why is it that the GOP, the Democrats are always saying, well, the GOP, the Republicans, they just don't have an alternative. They don't bring anything forward. When in reality, I think we really do have some ideas, and I'd like you to comment on that.
Well, we don't just have ideas. What we have is a framework that is coming directly from the American people. And let me tell you why this is so unique. This very sophisticated market research has never been done before. You got to remember, Washington, D.C., when they are ready to pass legislation that's going to impact Americans, they go into, with Obamacare specifically, they went into a back room. They didn't ask, the citizens what they wanted. They went into a back room with lobbyists and bureaucrats and the politicians, and they told us what we were going to have. Remember, they had to pass it so we could all find out what was in it. And as a result, they took a broken healthcare system, they passed Obamacare, and they broke it even more. Obamacare is absolutely restricted patient freedom and choice. And a Medicare for All system will eliminate both. I mean, you could really say that Medicare for All would be Obamacare on steroids.
But Elaine, what I see is that Republicans have been very, very bad at sort of expressing themselves on this topic. Hey, Obamacare, it was like it was in your face, Obamacare. And what was it? Okay, well, you can keep your kids on your program, on your insurance until they're 26. Okay, well, that's great. Oh, pre-existing conditions. They cannot deny you because of pre-existing conditions. And these concepts have become very, very popular. And then you got Medicare for All. I mean, that's the latest. And that's like, let's blow up Obamacare now and let's just go to national health. I mean, justice for all, Medicare for all, very quick, right off the lips. It sounds pretty interesting. Republicans don't have anything like that. I mean, what is their rallying call? I mean, in healthcare. And Rich and I have interviewed a number of members of Congress in the who are Republican, both from the House and the Senate. And we have many physicians. Conservatives have many physicians, in Congress.
I think there are 7.
7 of them is yeah. And yet we can't come up with a plan that's easy to kind of put out there, easy to understand, and can catch the imagination of the American people, like the Democrats have.
Well, sure, it's easy to just use a slogan, Medicare for All, and not have to explain how it's going to work. And that's the issue, is they can't explain how it's going to work. They can't explain how it's going to be paid for.
They're not even talking about it. And it's been how many years that they haven't been able to encapsulate, for the American people, what is the alternative?
Well, we just launched today, and they're going to be talking about it. Because what we're going to do is we're going to restore our program, our framework is going to restore that patient-doctor relationship, and we're going to reduce the complexity in the system, which is going to help reduce costs. I mean, this is a patient-centered approach, and what we've done is we have asked 25,000 people were part of this study. I mean, it's a massive undertaking, and with these inputs, we can provide a clear approach for legislators to actually provide legislation that will accomplish a plan that Americans want and that they need. And I'll give you an example. In the study, there's these essential benefits that are required under Obamacare, which has really been the big cost driver, is that, if you're a man, you're paying for maternity benefits. If you don't take drugs, you're paying for, drug addiction therapy and things like that. We asked people to actually rate where they prioritize keeping their kids on their health care plan until they were 26 years old. Well, guess what? When we asked them to make choices, because you always have to make trade-offs, that one fell off the map. I mean, that just wasn't an important element for them to have their children on their health insurance until they're 26 years old. And so when you start taking out those types of costs, removing unnecessary costs from the system, complexity from the system, you start saving them. When you start to inject competition and choice and price transparency in any industry, you do see costs come down, you see innovation increase, and healthcare is no exception to that economic fact.
Hey, Elaine, thanks for that. I mean, I think you summed it up very well, your position. Hey, we've been talking with Elaine Parker, who's the president of Job Creators Network Foundation. Elaine, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, Dr. Ruff and I are going to talk about a number of things in the headlines this week that impact your jobs. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruff. And so, Rich, big news this week on our jobs, on our economy, and on our entrepreneurs and our risk takers, our small businesses. You know, is it getting easier? Is it getting more complicated? Well, are we any closer to actually making a deal with China? Now, what did we just do? Well, temporarily, the President of the United States, President Xi of China, agreed that the United States would not increase tariffs from 25 to 30%, and China would buy some more agricultural products. But in the whole scheme of things, that's really not huge movement, in my opinion. The tariffs that a lot of people are concerned about are actually due to go in effect on December 15th, which is 15% on everything that's remaining. And I'm talking about all of those consumer goods. I'm talking about your iPhones, your computers, televisions, those consumer goods that we're used to buying. And 15% is a lot. It's a lot. And it's going to have to be passed on to the consumer. President Trump says, China's paying for those tariffs. He's absolutely wrong. It is the importer of those products who pays, who then has to pass that along. So I think it was, at best, this was a punt. It was a punt. Let's not deal with it. Let's kick it down the road. Hey, President Trump, President Xi is going to get together soon at the G20. Hopefully they'll get together and like each other, and maybe they'll paper up and sign some sort of agreement that we've just agreed to, and hopefully add something to it, deal with the December 15 tariffs, or the whole thing blows up and tariffs at 25 or 30% is going to look like a bargain by the time that these guys are done. I still say we're on the razor's edge.
Well, I think you're going to be on the razor's edge for quite a while. To me, I find it interesting. We always look at the market and see how it responds. And the minute the words came out this week that, we're going to put off the tariffs for a while, they're not going to go up. And the market jumped 500 points. It ended at, up 3 for the day when they announced it. But I think what this does is it lays out the framework and the land and the environment in which we're going to be operating and talking to them. And it creates a sense of stability. It loosens and reduces the hostility factor, and people are, a little bit more talkative. But it also gave a good talking point to our president and his administration in a week that he really needed it. There's a lot of bad news coming out constantly, and this was a touch of good news, and that kind of pulled it back for, the president and his team. So I think, I do find it interesting that Mr. Trump said that, I'd rather turn down a short term to get a better long term, and yet they're going along with this idea. And I listened to Larry Kudlow, and Larry's interesting. We've had him on the show. And Larry said, look, we're doing this. It's a good move. We're going in the right direction. But he always says we have a long way to go. He never not says that. We have a long way to go. There's a lot of work to be done. But we're talking, and this is good. So talking, engaging is better than not. And they're talking, and they're engaging, and they're doing, and I'm sure things are going on that none of us know anything about. Probably Pelosi doesn't know anything about because she's too busy walking out of meetings. But for another discussion. But so that's my thought on that.
Well, you know what we have coming up too is that the House, in a very, very bipartisan way, has passed 3 bills that is highly critical of China, and also very emotional to China. Something that they feel is infringing upon their sovereignty of Hong Kong. We're talking about the Hong Kong protesters.
Yeah, I know you're going there.
And now the Senate says they're going to take up the bill, and they're going to take it up fast, right? So in other words, in a very, very bipartisan way, the United States government is on the side of Hong Kong and its protesters. And by the way, I mean, these poor people, I mean, they're out there with the American flag, with Lady Liberty.
I find that to be amazing.
It's amazing.
It's wonderful.
Singing the American national anthem.
Right.
Someone from Australia the other day asked me, so what's so great about America? You know, you guys are really messing the world up. And I said, hey, are they singing the Australian national anthem in Hong Kong? Are they raising the Australian flag in Hong Kong? What's so great about America? Why don't you go ask those folks in Hong Kong right now?
Why don't they do that? That would be a good thing.
Staring down Hong Kong, staring down China. But imagine that. And then contrast that, Rich, and I want to get your thoughts on this, on the NBA. Aren't they supposed to be the most woke? The woke people, you know, the woke, I like this wokeness, the progressives and the liberals, they're woke. I guess that means we're sleeping. We're a bunch of zombies, but they're all woke.
And you have word.
In the NBA for justice, yeah. And they got to stand up to this terrible president because of justice. And here they are in communist China, prostrate in front of the emperor, President Xi. Oh, please, Emperor Xi. You know, please, we're the NBA and we're with you, and we're not with the American government or the American people or the Hong Kong protesters because they're all stupid. They don't know what they're doing. You guys really got it together over here.
Well, yeah, I do find it interesting what's going on, and it makes you think about, well, where is capitalism going and globalization? Does globalization really define in a different way what capitalism really means? And if you embrace capitalism, does it mean that you change your values? For example, how could the NBA back down from supporting human rights? I mean, that's antithetical to everything we're all about. So we are in very, very strange times. We're in strange, uncharted waters, and I think LeBron James really stepped in it.
In a big way. Hey, Rich, we got a lot to talk about. Still, lots of really wonderful conversations. We're going to talk more about tariffs and what that means with Dr. Gary Hufbauer from the Peterson Institute for International Economics. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neal Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin. So, Rich, this thing that's been happening in Syria with Turkey and the Kurds, I mean, it's really... It's very, very hard to untangle this. And but what many people believe, especially in the U.S. Congress, both on the Republican side and the Democrat side, is that we have abandoned our Kurd allies. And let's face it, Saddam Hussein was absolutely ruthless to the Kurds. The people in Iraq who stood by the Americans from the beginning to the end
were the Kurds.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And the Kurds, as a they're a huge nation of people without a nation. They live partially in Turkey, where they've been absolutely, just, oh my goodness, the horrible things that the Turks have done to the Kurds, what the Saddam Hussein did to the Kurds. And yet, these people, have hung in there. They're tough people. And then you see Turkey getting into Syria and going after these people and, hearing these horrible stories. So then Congress talks about sanctions. Did sanctions work to create this ceasefire? I don't know. Let's talk about that to our next guest, Dr. Gary Hufbauer from the Peterson Institute for International Economics in Washington, D.C., who is also a very prolific writer and has done many great things. He's been a professor at Georgetown University, as well as working at the U.S. Treasury as a director of international tax issues. Very pleased to have him on. Dr. Hufbauer, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for having me.
So here we are, Turkey. What's happening over there? These sanctions. What is this mess? Can you untangle it for us?
Well, looking at it from afar, though I've been to Turkey often, the sanctions that President Trump imposed, namely raising tariffs on steel to 50%, that was not what drove the Turks, because Turkey's steel exports to the U.S. are pretty small already, and the world steel market is enormous, so they can sell their steel elsewhere. But I think what motivated the Turks to have this ceasefire, and that's all it is, a ceasefire for 5 days, is the very strong bipartisan pressure in Congress to do a lot more. And the Graham Van Hollen bill, which probably won't be passed, but would put enormous pressure, economic pressure on Turkey and on European countries that trade with Turkey. So I think the prospect of all that was part of this mix that led to this compromise deal of a 5-day ceasefire. But the price of the ceasefire, as your remarks indicated, is that the Turks have to withdraw from that territory.
And I guess they're supposed to start doing that right now, I think. It has to happen immediately.
Not withdraw, but take their heavy weapons and, give up their fortifications and everything. So, in a way, it's kind of a way to get the Kurds out of that 400 square mile and probably other areas as well without a bloodbath. But no doubt the Kurds will have to surrender territory.
What I find interesting, I'd like to get your comment on this, when it was announced that the Secretary of State and the Vice President were traveling to meet with President Erdogan, he announced that he wouldn't meet with them. He only wanted to talk with the President. And yet, when you watch and look at the words that came out from the administration and from the Turks, evidently they're saying they went over there and they cut a deal and they were able to do it. So do you think it was, in fact, the threat of the sanctions, the breaking of their economy, as people said, that made him change and have dialogue with these two men?
I think that was part of it. I think the other part of it was that he got no support from Europe. And the prospect for Erdogan was really to be eased out bit by bit from the NATO alliance if he had not got some kind of deal. And if he's eased out of the NATO alliance, who's left? Well, that's Russia. So looking at the chessboard, I think Erdogan decided a little, a modest concession here was better than the prospect of going forward full blast with his military in northern Syria.
Well, this is a very intriguing scenario because Turkey, being a NATO member, is part of the dialogue and bylaws of NATO. And for the United States to take action against a fellow NATO member places us in a very, very bad scenario, wouldn't it? And it seems like the president tried to avoid anything like that.
Yeah, it was a lose-lose picture because from the U.S. standpoint, looking over a longer term, the last thing we want is Turkey to, kind of leave the Western community altogether and become best friends with Russia. So that's not a good prospect. And Trump was no doubt balancing these various considerations and making both his threats and his promises.
So, Dr. Hufbauer, why now? Why now to remove the Americans out of that 400 square miles? I mean, why Why now?
Well, that beats me. Because it was a stable, an unhappy situation for sure, but a stable situation. And as you said in the introduction, the Kurds have been allied with the United States in, these wars in Iraq, the 2 wars in Iraq, and now this whole war against ISIS. And so it has been, it's not a nation, as you said, but it is a group of people who have been very much on sides with the U.S.
Right.
So, I'm mystified. I'm mystified why the president just didn't leave it alone. Why did he do it? Beats me.
Okay. Well, that's good because it beats me too. And I thought I was missing something.
I'm included.
Hey, we're on with Dr. Hufbauer from the Peterson Institute for International Economics in Washington, D.C. We got plenty more to talk about. Stay with us. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're together with Dr. Gary Hufbauer from the Peterson Institute for International Economics. So, Dr. Hufbauer, that was really fascinating about Turkey and what's going on over there, but boy, the Kurds have been very, very good and true friends of ours, and they have been so abused by their neighbors. And America was finally this breath of fresh air to them. My goodness, and their children and raising their children in that very hostile environment and having America there standing on their side. And then having that taken away from them. I don't know. I just think it was the wrong thing to do. And this certainly wasn't the time to do it. And now you're hearing about jails and ISIS people that have been rounded up, have been let go. You're hearing about American facilities being taken over by the Russians. Wow. Rich, just kind of sum that up and we'll move on to maybe another topic that's less emotional.
Exactly. Well, first of all, late in the day, when the president announced the ceasefire that had been negotiated, it was also announced that a lot of the folks that are the individuals who are ISIS who are in the prisons, a lot of them have been recaptured. That's what he said. I was listening to it myself. But I tend to not listen.
Well, they're not standing on the street corners eating donuts, man.
And they didn't take a taxi because there aren't any. So, but on the other hand, I sit back and I watch and I wait to see what things are really going to do, because there's so much misinformation and disinformation that's out there. I just want to wait and see where the dust settles, to be perfectly honest, because I don't believe everything I hear anymore. I just don't. So I have to wait and see what really happens and what comes forward. So and it is very intriguing to me, and that this president, our president, would create this a little bit more chaos in a chaotic world, when right now there's so much chaos surrounding this president that we want to get through that in a good way. That I was baffled that he would bring more angst into the scenario. But maybe there's something out there we all don't know. Maybe we don't know everything. That's a distinct possibility, because I don't get CIA briefings. Well, I don't know if I want CIA briefings anymore, but I don't get the briefings that the president gets. So let's wait and see what happens.
So, Dr. Hufbauer, a couple of more topics to get through. This is more mundane, but yet very important, and it could create a trade war, as we've seen the president threatening tariffs on France because of their digital taxes. And I guess that's targeted at American companies, because American tech companies are the ones who aren't paying these taxes that now France and other countries want to collect. And so what is the issue with digital taxes? Should we care? Is that a national issue? It's not our issue. How much should we get engaged in this?
Well, I care a lot. The digital flows worldwide are the one growth element in the global economy. As you know, and I'm sure you covered this, world trade in merchandise has barely grown this year. It's a very tepid growth. That's because of all the protection and the lack of new liberalization, and even growth in business services, things like FedEx, health services, finance, has grown quite slowly. But digital flows are growing gangbusters, and our calculations indicate they've added a lot to the world economy, to increasing the world economy in countries which participate. Now, there's very little regulation in the international sphere or agreed rules on digital flows, on anything from where you locate your servers to electronic signatures to open access to digital sites, on and on. No international rules to speak of. And one area where there are no rules is the taxation of companies. Now here, in fact, if you read existing tax treaties and existing WTO agreements, although they don't use the word digital, they would seem to prevent new taxes on digital flows. That is where, for example, Facebook offers its platform to French customers, or for that matter, Canadian or Mexican customers, and in return collects money on ads which are targeted at particular customers, particular groups of customers. Now, France doesn't read the treaties the way I do and doesn't read the agreements the way I do, and it's passed a digital tax. And of course, finance ministries are always looking for new ways to collect money. Canada and Mexico have now said they might do that. Austria said that. UK has said that.
Dr. Hufbauer, how do they collect a tax? I mean, how do they tax Facebook? What would they do?
What's it based on?
What's it based on?
What's it based on?
Yeah, they tell Google or Facebook or Amazon, whatever. They say, we're going to look at your revenues worldwide, and we're going to make a calculation of what amount of your revenues is derived somehow from doing business in France. In other words, from having your platform used by French people.
Dr. Hufbauer, it's been a fascinating few minutes with you. I mean, you've really enlightened me on this topic. I have decided now that I'm against digital taxes. So
good.
You've converted me. Thank you.
I have at least one convert.
Yes. Count me in. Folks, we've been on with Dr. Gary Hufbauer from the Peterson Institute for International Economics in Washington. Doctor, thanks for being on the show. You've been a wonderful guest. Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin. So, Rich, you've been dying to get in on this digital tax issue here. What do you got?
Well, I find it very intriguing that these countries see a source of revenue. And look at the countries that are doing it. If you go into Europe, Europe's economies are not exactly as strong as the United States right now. But what bothers me in this whole scenario is that we just listened to Dr. Hufbauer. I really enjoyed listening to him. And the digital environment has been an amazing entrepreneurial environment, Neal. It encourages R&D. People can dream of creating something, and they do it in the digital virtual world. And in a way, and it's very possible that the unintended consequences of taxing companies in the digital environment could also, in a way, impede the ability to bring new product to the digital environment, because it'll cost more money along the way. So I don't think that's a good thing.
But maybe to be the devil's advocate here, I sell a lot of products to France, right?
Yeah.
And my products get taxed, and they pay a sales tax, which is very hefty in Europe. They pay a small tariff, but altogether, it's about 20%. I mean, that's not small. And I'm a products company. I sell boxes of products, and people pay taxes on them. And that turns out to be a lot of money. And these governments build highways and provide services to their citizens, and just lots of things happen because people pay taxes on these products. So why should digital companies not have to pay tax?
Well, let me ask you this question. Are they paying other taxes right now because they're digital? Every time you buy a product from Amazon, aren't you paying a tax?
I guess, well, that's why I don't think Amazon is a good example, which Dr. Hufbauer said, because if you buy from Amazon France, they do have the sales tax and the VAT in there.
Right.
I'm talking about a product which is a physical product, a tangible product that you could put here on the table and say, I like that product, hold it and use it and marvel at it. Whereas a digital product, obviously it's very different. You can't hold it in your hand, right?
Well,
you can't set it
let's
on the
think
table.
for a second.
So one is taxed and one isn't. So why? Why do I have to pay taxes and somebody else doesn't? Why do I have to carry the burden of building our roads and building our ports and providing money for our national security and helping build our military because I pay taxes, and people who have a digital product doesn't?
Even if it's a virtual product.
Even a virtual product. I don't care what product.
So you're delivering movies every night. That's on the internet. That's digital. You tax that.
Well, I'm just saying what's fair and what's not. I mean, one product has to build the country, and another product gets a free ride.
Well, in the United States right now, because I do this on, I never even thought about this. I'm going to look at it this weekend. When I purchase something from Amazon Prime on TV, after 47 minutes of looking for something to buy on Amazon Prime, just saying, because you go through 18 million rows of different movies and shows and stuff. Am I paying a tax on that? I don't even know. That's a really good question. Do you know? I don't know. I'm honest.
Well, it's part of your Prime membership. But,
it's part of the membership, but am I
not
paying tax on the 2 or 3 movies that Gloria and I are going to watch this weekend?
Let us know next week.
I'm going to report back next week.
You got to let us know.
I'm going to do that
week.
Exactly.
It's a very important issue because, hey, look, digital isn't just the big companies. It's not just Google. It's not just Amazon. It's not just Facebook and others. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs. There's a lot of small businesses. And they create a lot of jobs, and they do a lot of good for our country.
Yes, I agree.
But there's a lot of things that has to happen. What do we talk about? Our infrastructure. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Oh, we got to build our military. Oh, Obama, he did nothing for our military. Now we have to catch up. And hey, by the way, the Chinese, look at what they're doing, and look at what Russia's doing, and even other countries like Iran and North Korea. How are we going to protect ourselves? The new technologies of war. That costs a lot of money. Who's going to fund all that?
Well, do you think we can get the $150 billion back from Iran that Obama snuck in there in the middle of the night? That would be a nice down payment.
Well, it's a down payment.
I had to say that. Sorry, the window was open for me to do that. Had to get away with it.
Yeah, but that's why it's a complex situation. And also the issue of what is sovereignty? Does a country have a right to do whatever the country has to do? America's always talking about Trump's talking about America first. We're going to do what's right for our country. We're going to do what's right for our country. Should not France do what's right for its country, and Germany what's right for its country?
Well, maybe they should. Maybe they have their. I can't tell them what to do. Well, you know what's interesting? Netflix this week announced their quarterly profits. They were expected at 41 cents a share, came in at 47. That telling you something?
I think that they're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Hey, Rich, love to be with you, brother, but unfortunately,
I know it's over. We got to go. We got to go.
We're out of time.
I know. The Uber's here.
But don't be sad, because we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.